Bradley Liew, writer, director, cinematographer and producer, a Malaysian based in the Philippines. Although only in his 20s, Liew has already gained international recognition for his debut feature, Singing in Graveyards. The Malaysia-Philippines co-production had its world premiere at the Venice International Film Festival's Critics Week. Liew is a business graduate with a bachelor's degree in business and commerce. He has never formally studied film. There he was presented with the Lumos Award for Outstanding Performance by renowned Chinese director Jia Zhangke. Liew is currently producing When the Waves Are Gone, a film by celebrated Filipino director Love Diaz. So Bradley, it's nice to see you again.
You too. Good morning.
After meeting in a couple of film festivals overseas. Yeah? Now, I think one of the things that would be very interesting for us to know would be, you're a business graduate.
Yes.
So how did you get into the cruel world of filmmaking?
Well, like you said, I'm a business graduate. I've got a major in economics, international business, and a minor in management. So, I think for me, personally, I think you got to do something that you know that you don't want to do for the rest of your life. You know, yeah. So that's what I did. I mean, in Malaysia, it was a little bit difficult to move into film. So I started out and I studied business. I mean, like just to kind of make the parents happy, kind of, give myself kind of backup plan, I guess, to a certain extent. But while I was doing the degree, I mean, almost 3 years of it, I knew every day that I wanted to do a film, that I knew that this is not what I wanted, or what I was studying wasn't what I wanted to do in my life. So I guess that kind of like built a passion, doing stuff that you don't want to do.
Yeah, there are points in our lives when we discover that we want to do something else. But for you, at which point did you feel that you actually wanted to do film?
After I graduated, I did some small jobs, camera assisting, production assistant. I mean, I started from the ground up. But in 2012, I managed to get into this wonderful program. It's called the Asian Film Academy. And it's part of the Busan International Film Festival. And I was Malaysia's representative that year. And when I first got there, it's kind of like a 2-week film program. You stay in a bubble, you breathe film, you learn about cinema, you make a short film. And that year, my dean was Jia Zhangke from China. So, and that was my first film festival. And when I got there, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And what was more impressive was I was able to watch cinema from around the world cinema, something I was never exposed to back here in Malaysia. So that really opened up my eyes and my perspective on film and cinema. So I think that was really the moment that I felt that this is something I needed to do. Like this is what I'm meant to do, I guess.
You are a business graduate. You got into filmmaking, but you did not go for a proper formal training. How did you pick up all the skills of understanding cinematography? And you yourself became a cinematographer, isn't it? So how did that happen in a short space of time, and we see it in your first film?
I guess it's just really, if you're really passionate, you truly want to do this as a career, you would do anything to learn more. I mean, when I started from the ground all the way up. I mean, I did camera assistant work. I mean, I have some wonderful mentors and some cinematographers. Even when I was pushing into my first film, I did behind-the-scenes photography for Love Diaz. I mean, don't think you're above anyone else. I mean, if you really want to learn, you need to go out and figure out how to get that knowledge. Do anything you need to do to get that knowledge. And I learned everything on set. The internet is fast. You can look up anything on the internet. But to actually understand cinema, you need to be, on set. You need to feel what it's like on a shoot. You need to understand why the director is doing a certain thing, how they feel about the film, the philosophy on the scene. I think that's stuff that you can't learn in the classroom. You don't need to go to film school to learn that. You just need to interact with people making films.
When did you move to Philippines?
Right after Asian Film Academy 2012, I met my producer, my soon-to-be producer, Bianca Pabuena. And she and a director called Pepe Dioknoa, and they invited me to the Philippines to do behind the scenes for a feature film called Above the Clouds. And that was like, I think about 23 days of shoot. So for almost months I was there filming behind the scenes and watching what it was like to shoot independent cinema in Philippines. And then, I fell in love with Bianca, so that's why I stayed, I guess.
Yeah, Beyond the Clouds was a beautiful film. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I think it was a great experience up on the mountains, isn't
Yes, yes.
it? So now you are in a different culture
Yes.
as compared to Malaysia. Eh?
Yes.
And how is it that you can immerse yourself in a different culture and make a film set in another country with another culture?
Well, this is for me. I don't feel like we should be limited by geography. You know, when we go to different places, we see, we observe, we see people, we see how they live, and then we realize that they're very much similar to us. You know, the people who suffer here and people have happiness here are almost the same as people down there. So that's kind of how we connect. I mean, because cinema is so unifying, right? Like, you make a film, you want to show an array of emotion, a feeling, a story that we can connect to everywhere in the world. You know? So I feel that we should not really be, limited by geography. I think cinema is something that will unite rather than divide, I guess.
Yeah, I think what you're doing now is also similar to what happened in Malaysian cinema. That in the early days we had Indian directors from India coming in and working with the locals and showing our culture, even though there was an element of melodrama. And I think the globalized world has enabled us to get into another culture, go to another country, cross borders, and do stories that are very different from what you would do in Malaysia. Let's take your film, Singing in the Graveyard. How did the story begin? Did it begin with an idea for a story, or did you meet a character that inspired the story?
Well, when I was working on behind the scenes in Above the Clouds, I mean, one of the lead actors was Pepe Smith. And Pepe Smith, at that time I didn't know who he was. To me, he was, just an actor on set. But then I found out that he was the rock legend of the Philippines. He was the Mick Jagger. He created, with his group One La Cruz band, they created Filipino rock. But I didn't know that at that time. So all I knew about him was this elderly man on set that was often lonely. He kept to himself and he would joke around, but people wouldn't understand his jokes. And when I found out who he was, I asked him, one day, Piaps, I call him Piaps. Piaps, what was your most famous love song? And then he said, Brad, I've never written a love song in my entire career. So then I got thinking, could it be that this guy who was 66 at the time, could he be this rock star that lived such a crazy career, right? Crazy life? Maybe he's never ever fallen in love. So that was the seed of the idea, I guess, that started this whole obsession with making the film Singing Graveyards.
Yeah, some of the great films actually begin with a character, and if it affects you, in a sense, he is actually driving the story, isn't it?
Yes.
So his name was actually Pepe Smith.
Well, in the film, he plays a character called Pepe, who impersonates a rock legend called Joey Smith. And Pepe's name in real life is Pepe Joey Smith.
There's an element of surrealism already in your name, yeah? How did Pepe himself react to your request for him to star in the movie?
I mean, he was very keen. I mean, from the get-go, I told him, Piaps, this is going to be a story about you, but not really about you, And he was like, really? Yeah. Okay, I'll do it. So, and I think he had no idea what he was getting himself into, because we required him to really open his soul to the screen. He needed to show everything. I mean, he needed to lay everything bare. And he was joking with me. Actually, at the premiere in Venice, he was joking with the audience. He said that some days he will wake up and he wasn't really sure who he was. Was he Pepe, the impersonator? Was he Joey Smith, the rock star? Or was he like a third persona? So for him, I think he had a good ride.
So it must have been quite a high thing for him. I mean, to be at that age, then suddenly people are looking at him in a different manner. And he's more or less coming back into the limelight that he did not really have at the beginning, isn't it? Has he ever acted before?
He did one, he's always done like really small cameos, and then he did Above the Clouds, which was like kind of like a dual lead role. And this is his first solo lead.
How did you handle the scene with the other actors who are interacting with him? Did they know what he was going to do and how to react to it?
The other actors are wonderful. I mean, very talented actors from all generations. We even got Lav Diaz to play his manager. But I told the actors already, like, we wanted to create this environment where Pepe, you would react to Pepe. You know, to give Pepe that safety net, you know, so to make sure that there's no wrong action when Pepe acts. So they needed to figure out how to mold their acting and their position in their scene to Pepe's movement, to Pepe's dialogue, that he would suddenly change. So they had no idea what Pepe was going to do. In fact, we had no idea what Pepe was going to do half the time. So we just kind of embraced it.
And the music itself, where he's singing and playing the guitar, was that live or you had to do some posts?
Oh, everything was live. Everything that you saw on the screen was captured there on the spot.
Yeah, that was really good sound recording. So how did the sound recordist handle all those scenes technically?
Well, we had wonderful sound recordist, Mickey Makachor, who also did the post sound. So he was there from the beginning all the way to the end. And I think it was a big challenge for him as well, because I told him that we would never know what Pepe would do, or when he might sing something, or when he might feel like the inspiration was coming. So Mickey needed to be prepared all the time, and I think he did a good job.
Was it a conscious decision to have Lav Diaz, who we all know is a great director, to be appearing as a character in a film?
Yes. Well, I also produced for Lav Diaz, so we are good friends. And I told him, like, Lav, we need a character in my film, and he plays a horrible, cheating manager that would swindle Pepe's money. And I need you to be it. He's like, yeah, cool, rock and roll, let's do it. So I thought it was really interesting that everyone that we casted kind of played the opposite of themselves in real life.
And I know Lav Diaz personally because we interviewed him on Astro A-List. I was taken by his character being totally different from what he is in real life.
Yes.
You know, and he is in a sense almost like Pepe himself, trying to be someone, trying to live a life that he wanted to live, but he does not at the end. And there's a scene where he is with his grandson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And there we begin to see that he's out of touch with the modern world, isn't it? The kid is playing with a mobile phone or a game, and he doesn't understand about the internet and so on. I think, in a sense, you are actually paying homage to many people through him, that, you know, sometimes this new world of the young people is so estranged from the older group, and I think that is very universal. Now, was this in the original script, or did it develop on set?
That was in the original script. Actually, that reaction between the grandfather and the grandson was me reacting to my grandfather. Yeah, so that's why I said, you know, when my grandfather passed away, I had all these memories of guilt and of scenarios where I wish I did things differently. I wish I paid more attention. I wish I was more patient with him. And I think these scenes are very important. These scenes were very important for me in the film. I needed to have these scenes to really convey what I wanted to say between the old and the young generation.
You also mentioned that it had something to do with the memory of your grandfather. How did that work?
When we decided, Bianca and myself, we wrote the script. But when we decided that we would commit to this story, we started doing a lot of research on Pepe Smith, trying to figure out who he was, and we found out all these stories about how he was mistreated by certain managers, how he was, people took his money, and how he is so good-natured. And while we were doing that, my grandfather passed away. And when that happened, there was this overwhelming sense of guilt I had. Guilt for not spending enough time with him, guilt of not listening to him. Like when a older person speaks, sometimes the young don't listen. It's a very common thing. I mean, like we feel like the old are just going on and on and on, and we feel as young people we have more important things to do in this present time. But we don't appreciate these moments with our elderly, right? So when he passed away, I guess writing the script, thinking about Pepe Smith, thinking of my grandfather, and thinking about how, people also treat Pepe Smith the same way as I treated my grandfather. I felt a lot of guilt in that. So I guess I kind of try to merge my experiences of my grandfather and Pepe Smith's own experiences into a story.
Is there something that happened during the shoot that you never expected and you just went with it?
Well, a couple of months before we shot, Pepe Smith had a stroke. And it wasn't very bad. It affected his speech just a little bit. But what it really did was it made him very tired. So he had very little energy. And because of that, every day we could only shoot maybe 5-6 hours. So every day we were fighting against time, and we had to figure out how to accommodate this this loss of energy, this time constraint that we had with Pepe. And it was very difficult for him because sometimes he would just, he couldn't do it. He couldn't remember his lines. He would fall asleep on set because it's a physical thing, right? We can't do anything about it. And we didn't have the budget to go beyond a certain amount of days. So we really had to tailor-make how we shot to accommodate this unforeseen circumstances. So sometimes, well, most of the time, we would just shoot, without rehearsal, just shoot it, and if we get it, there's no safety. We don't believe in, the concept of a safety take didn't exist for us, because if we knew that we had what we wanted, we would just move on and just continue the next scene and next scene, because we had so much limited time.
Has the film gone into the Philippine cinemas?
Yes, and it was very well received by the audience. They got all the little jokes and all the side jokes and stuff.
That's surprising. Films like this do not really work for Malaysia. It's a pity. So it's good that you have come up with something that actually reflects what you yourself felt about your own grandfather. And the stories that are very strong are this kind of stories that come from your own personal experience. A couple of our filmmakers have made it overseas. And you, with your first film, you have already made it into the Critics Week at Venice. How was the reception there, and what was being said about your film and you as a very young filmmaker?
Well, after the film, a lot of people were able to really see Pepe Smith. I guess to really see who he was. And I think they were kind of surprised that I would do, me at maybe a very early stage of my career would do a film about a really older person. But I guess that story just I needed to tell that story at that point in time. And I'm just really happy that, the international community really took it and really saw what I wanted to do with the film.
Well, I can tell you that I reacted to it, and I saw myself in the character to a certain extent of Pepe, because I'm his age. So it's very unusual for a young man to be able to go very deep into the lives of older people, because normally young people do not want to be associated with old people and their idiosyncrasies, isn't it? But what is your take on Malaysian cinema itself? I'm sure you have seen some of the mainstream films as well as the independent works. Do you feel that Malaysian cinema is having a problem as far as identity is concerned? Are we having a Malaysian identity in our films?
I think our search for identity may be our biggest strength, because they give us, I guess, a certain diversity in our work. But I feel right now maybe we're in a transition point in our storytelling. I guess I think many young directors are coming out, many new people are coming in, and that just means there are new stories being told. I don't think we're in a problematic situation. People will make their films. There is a market for every kind of film. And I think the most important thing right now is that the young generation gets exposed to different kinds of films. And that way they are, they're able to see the different options that they have, that you don't need to make a film one way. You can make it your way.
Well, I think I agree with you that it should be the search rather than you end the search. Once you end the search, there's nothing else to say, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Now, how do you think about films reflecting the filmmaker himself? Do you think in the future, when you are going to be making films, that more and more you would be going for the alternative approach? Or do you want to succeed as a mainstream filmmaker? Or you want to have a balance of both?
I would love to have a balance of both. And I don't think just because you go into make a mainstream film, you don't have to make it artistic. When the audience watches a film, they need to connect to the film. And that's where, your strength lies, as an auteur, I guess. As a person who writes and directs, you need to make sure the audience connects to it, otherwise they feel nothing. So maybe just a mainstream film or maybe a genre film. It's just a different medium of telling that same story.
Are you thinking of another film on Pepe himself?
Actually, we just did a documentary about Pepe Smith and about him in the 1970s, where he went to Japan and he was in the first band that created J-Rock. So we did a documentary about that. So.
Well, Bradley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For such an enlightening film that makes us think that one day we are going to be old and then we are going to be faced up with all these problems that people cannot react to us. And good luck with your next film.
Thank you.
This is Akasha, a ghost story. And I'm personally waiting to see how it's going to come out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.